So I've just spent a couple of hours with your child. He's delightful. Now, of course, we have to go over the language. We have to go over, social communication, all those things. And I always talk about, your child does such a good job with this and that and that. The biggest problem I'm seeing, as you've noticed, is that your child's very hard to understand. Let me try to explain to you why that might be. There's lots of things that have to happen when people talk. And one of the things that has to happen is that we have to create noise, because there's lots of ways we can communicate. We can communicate with a gesture or a sign, but we can also communicate with writing. We can also communicate by speaking. And when we speak, we make noise, right? And our respiratory, our breathing, and our vocal folds vibrate, and we create this noise. And then we constrict that noisy airstream with our lips, jaw, and tongue. But you heard me go, did that make any sense to you? And that's because to create that noise, we have to move our jaw, our lips, our tongue. And I usually stick with that. I'm going to the velum and the pharynx and all that. In order for that noise to happen. But it can't be haphazard, or it sounds like, in order to make it meaningful to a listener, the jaw has to move just the right amount, while the lips make a little bit of rounding or a little bit of smiling, while the tongue's moving up or down. And they all have to move at the right rate, with the right range. They have to get to just the right place, and they have to get there with just the right amount of muscle tension in order for it to come out like hi, so that you can understand it. When there's and I usually don't say there's anything wrong with the brain, but I say sometimes the brain processing that we do for this can be inefficient, so that the right muscles don't contract at the right time to get all the articulators to the right place at the right time. And we have a label for that. It's called apraxia of speech. And that's just a label for a speech disorder that's characterized by a few things that I'm going to go over with you that I heard your son or your daughter do. Now, the reason that's important that we give a label to these different kinds of speech disorders is that helps us choose the right kind of treatment. And for your child, because they're not very efficient at planning what has to move and in what direction and how fast, we're going to use approaches that focus on motor learning. And we know how to do that, and we're going to be able to help your child. And you're going to be helpful in that too. I'm going to work in a partnership with you. And I'll show you what you can do at home. But first, we're going to get him started with a very few words until he starts getting better at this. And then we'll add and add.